Hi guys, how's it going? JB here. This is just going to be a video about RPE, something that I use in a lot of my clients' programs, but I've realised I've never written or made any content about it. So yeah, thought I'd give you guys a little overview. So RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion, and an easy way of describing it is it's a score out of 10 to assess the difficulty or intensity of a set or an exercise or a training session. So an easy way to think about it is it's the proximity to failure, or what you would perceive to be your maximum output at that time. Okay, so here's a good little scale. So we rate it out of 10, but we don't really bother with like 1 to 3 very often, because it's kind of 1 RPE would be sitting on the sofa or in bed, lying in bed, and then a few notches up from that probably doesn't really count as training necessarily. So we tend to look at it from like 4 upwards. So 4 to 5 RPE is warm-up territory. You could have done at least 5 more reps with that weight. And just to clarify now, we are talking about weight training. We'll come on to other types of training in a moment. And then you'd pull the face of the little chap there, which is me as a wee baby. And then 6 to 7 RPE, we're starting to get a little bit tougher now. The reps are still moving quite fast. There's not really much slowdown of the bar or the weight. And you could have definitely done 3 to 4 more reps with that weight. And you can see here I'm starting to exert myself a little bit more, judging by the facials there, but still not quite maximally. And then here, the weight is moving a little bit slower, but you could have definitely done 1 or 2 more reps with that weight. So let's say, for example, you get out 8 reps, but you probably could have done 2 more reps, or definitely could have done 2 more reps, I should say. That is an 8 RPE. And here I'm pulling some more aggressive facials, but still not quite my ugliest or pushing as hard as I absolutely could. And then here we've got the 10 RPE, pretty close to death, might shit myself. The weight is moving really slow, and I haven't got a chance in hell of getting another rep out. So it's my absolute maximum output at that weight. And then also we can go one step further. We can look at it for cardio stuff as well. So 5 RPE would be like really gentle walk. At this pace you could sing. You wouldn't necessarily want to hear it, but you know, if you're going at 5 RPE, you should still be able to kind of get enough breath in and out to be able to sing. At 6 RPE, you can speak in full sentences, so like your breath's getting a little bit more breathy, shall we say, but you can still talk properly. At 7 RPE, you're pumping intensity up a little bit more, but you can still speak in short sentences, but you might need to stop to catch your breath a little bit. Then at 8 RPE, you can say just a few words at a time. You're starting to work really hard now. At 9 RPE, if someone asks you a question, you might only be able to utter the odd word here and there. And then at 10 RPE, you're really gassing out, not a chance of getting a word out. You're just kind of purely focused on the exercise bit at the time, getting yourself through it, no chance of uttering a single word. So why use RPE? So we want to use it to try and manage our training volume and training intensity based on an internal load, not just something which is external. And what's the difference? Well, external load is stuff like we've got here. It might be bench pressing 100 kilos for 8 reps, or running 10 kilometers in 60 minutes, or jumping on the bike and going for 20 minutes at a 2 minutes per kilometer pace. So it's stuff which is external from the body, and variables that are external from the body, I should say. And then basically it assumes that we get an easily predicted output based on an input. So for example, like our bro over here, it assumes you're a robot or a machine. You lift weight, you get big. That's pretty much the assumption if you're purely focused on external load. Now, if you were to focus more on internal load, this is more stuff which kind of comes from within, like based more on our thoughts, feelings, internal physiology, rather than something which is more kind of like output driven. So for example, running at 60 minutes, keeping your heart rate sub 140 beats per minute, that would be focusing on internal load. Doing as many reps on chin-ups as you can, working at an 8 RPE, so leaving a couple of reps in the tank, that's another example of focus on internal load. Or doing 3 sets of 8, say on a back squat at 7 to 9 RPE in that range, that again is an example of using internal load. Now, what this does, it allows us to push an intensity that's relative to how we're feeling on any given day, both physically and psychologically. So if you are feeling particularly good, like your legs are feeling nice and fresh, you might be able to get a higher output at a 9 RPE than you would perhaps if your legs were feeling sore. Or say you've had like an argument with your other half, you're feeling really stressed out, your output at 8 RPE might not be the same as if you were having like a nice harmonious married life. It would be a little bit different in terms of your output, most likely. And focusing on internal load, basically, it gives us a bit more of an assumption that we're real humans. We've got thoughts and feelings and stresses, and it basically allows us to moderate our training based on how we are feeling. So this kind of model assumes that we can lift weights whilst respecting our sleep, our feelings, our stress levels and social factors. Then we make the adaptations to exercise, i.e. get big, strong, fast. So one really kind of common objection to people using RPE is that they just feel they don't trust themselves. And these are kind of quite common objections just down the side here. So people often say, well, I feel like I can only train to failure. I'm an all or nothing kind of person, and I'm worried that I'm not pushing hard enough. Now, RPE, we have to remember here, it's subjective, but it still allows us to make the training adaptations that we're after. So training adaptations don't occur in like a really kind of specific, finite, specific zone. Instead, we've got a bit of a range where we can still perhaps work a little less hard and make training adaptations. We don't always need to hit a definitive number or intensity for those adaptations to happen, and RPE is a very useful tool to allow for that to happen. It's kind of like a framework, shall we say. So having a range that we can successfully work in is pretty useful. It allows us to break away from believing that only very, very hard training is useful. And I kind of urge everyone to give these kind of things a go. I'm sure we can all say that, you know, we don't have it perfectly right all the time, and there's always room for improvement. RPE might be one such way that you can bring certain principles into your own training, way of thinking, and allow you to reap the benefits. And it's one of those things as well, like, let's say, for example, it might be a training model that you're just not used to using yet, and you just haven't had the experience with it. Well, give it a go, practice. Just like anything else, when you first start out, you're going to be a little bit rusty. It might not get the results that you perhaps were hoping for and expect. However, within a few weeks, studies show that people are pretty good at actually getting those RPE scores nice and accurate, and therefore still make the training adaptations. Another huge benefit of it as well is if you just give yourself a program, or a coach gives you a program which is based only on percentages or like definitive weights, it doesn't really allow for things to be tailored. However, RPE allows you to adjust, to kind of change things on the fly based on how you are feeling over a whole training cycle. So it really gives you that unique benefit and allows you to truly tailor and auto-regulate things as you work through your training program. So let's put this into place as a few examples. So let's say, for example, last week's session, you did a 100 kilo bench press for 3 sets of 8. This week, you're required to do 102.5 kilos for 3 sets of 8. So you've bunged a couple of little biscuits on each end of the bar. You're trying to incrementally increase the weight that you're lifting to drive some progression. However, using this as an example, we had Storm Eunice yesterday and my gym door blew off, so I got pretty stressed. Couldn't leave the gym, so I didn't really eat properly, and I wasn't feeling my strongest. Like, not the best physical and psychological state for me to be in to better my best from last time. So what would you do? So if you try and go for this heavier load anyway, thinking that anything less is a failure and is regression, you'll often be disappointed. We've got a very finite capacity to increase our load kind of incrementally each week. If you assume that you did that every week across the whole year, it wouldn't be long and you'd be the world's strongest man. And as much as I've got faith in everyone, that's probably not going to happen, is it? So we know that progression is not linear and we need to allow for a little bit of regression now and again. But as long as that trend goes up over time, we're probably along the right lines. So a better way might be, rather than giving that pressure on ourselves to only accept that progression is successful, we might need to go down the RPE route, and a better approach might be to say, right, I'm going to aim for 3 sets of 8 at 7 to 9 RPE instead, because we can make a few assumptions. We know that if you're working in that 7 to 9 RPE range, that the weight is going to be quote unquote heavy enough. We know that it's going to be enough to drive adaptation still, even though it might not be lifting a little bit more than last week. It might be the same as last week, it might be a little bit less, but the chances are it's going to be in the right ballpark to still drive some adaptation. It also allows for progression if it's on. So sorry, I've got a typo there, so that should say if it's on. So let's say, for example, you're feeling pretty good, you're really well slept, you're really well fueled, you haven't had a particularly busy week at work. Well, it might be that actually working at the 7 to 9 RPE, your like extra weight, that 102.5, might be within that 7 to 9 RPE range, and you might be on to lift for a new PB. And the good thing is as well, like, it's a framework that allows for these inevitable fluctuations in performance. As I say, progression will not be linear. You won't always be able to lift a little bit more week on week. So, little summary. So, external load is important, but if we only focus on that, you're going to be disappointed, you're going to be frustrated. And also, of course, here, as I've put in the brackets, and you just end up with a lack of enjoyment. Training is meant to be fun, it's meant to be enjoyable, it's not all meant to be purely about the business, lifting more each time. We've got to have a little bit of fun with it, right? And the good thing about internal load is it allows you to work at a sufficient intensity without forcing adaptation. If you think, as an example, like we used before with the bench press, if you assume you can lift 2.5 kilos more each week, every week, you're trying to force that adaptation. But what's going on inside and what not actually be actual adaptation. And instead, we probably need to respect the two and bring them together. So having external loads allows for us to have reference points. Okay, so you know what your PBs are. However, if you allow for RPE to do the work within the training program, so you lift according to how you're feeling on that day, how you're feeling in that particular stage of your training cycle or whatever, then the gains will become apparent when you're ready. And this framework allows for you to super individualize everything. So if you're a female and you have a menstrual cycle, for example, RPE will allow you to work within that rather than being predictive, rather than saying like, right, at this stage in my cycle, I've read in a textbook that I should be weaker. Well, if you use RPE, it will allow for those inevitable fluctuations that come as a result of that. Or it might be that if you're in a training cycle where you're doing a little bit more cardiovascular training than normal, you might have extra fatigue on your legs, RPE is going to make allowances for that as well. So it truly allows you to tailor things as they come. And as I say here, then the gains will become apparent when you are ready. So you're not forcing that adaptation, you're allowing it to happen, you're allowing the training program to do the work, and then the gains will come when they're ready. So hopefully that all made sense. I know it was a very whistle-stop tour of everything RPE, but hopefully you can see the rationale of why I like to put it in my clients' training programs. If you've got any questions, hit me up. Got my email address in the bottom corner here, or my Instagram handle. Feel free to drop us a message. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching, and I will speak to you soon.